The coronavirus continues to spread, disrupting business, roiling the world economy, and shutting down religious services and masses across the United States. Bishop Michael Burbidge of Arlington, Virginia, is here to tell us what the church is doing to safeguard parishioners. And how does a priest lead his parish when he is in self-isolation after exposure to the virus? Papal Posse member Father GERALD Murray knows firsthand, and he'll tell us about it. Later, schools are closing and spring breaks are being extended. Honey, what do we do with the kids? Clinical psychologist and EWTN Radio host Dr. Ray GUARENDI shares advice on how to manage your family and sanity during the pandemic. And a look at how the coronavirus is affecting the homeless and what's being done to help them. Nick Iorio of New York City Relief joins us. The World Over begins right now.
Now, from Washington, D.C., Raymond, Arroyo.
A warm welcome to all of you joining us in the United States and the world over. We're so happy to be with you during this global confinement. We have some news, inspiration, and much more in the hour ahead. Bishop Michael Burbidge, Father GERALD Murray, Dr. Ray GUARENDI, and Nick Iorio will join us straight ahead. If you'd like to comment on tonight's show, send me a tweet. I'm at Raymond Arroyo. Lots to cover, but first, some news. The Shrine of Our Lady of Lourdes has closed for the first time in its history following new restrictions in France to slow the spread of the coronavirus. No public masses will be offered in the sanctuary due to measures announced by French Prime Minister Emmanuel Macron. Following the closure of the shrine, Auxiliary Bishop Antoine Hirorand called on Catholics to participate in a novena to Our Lady of Lourdes from March 17th to the 25th. To pray for those afflicted with the coronavirus. Lourdes was the location of an apparition of the Virgin Mary to St. Bernadette in 1858. The shrine also holds a spring of water that is said to have miraculous healing properties. France is the third European country to enact a mandatory national quarantine in response to the growing number of cases of COVID-19. Italy and Spain have imposed nationwide lockdowns, while Germany and Greece have also temporarily suspended all religious services. And Brazil's Christ the Redeemer statue was lit up with flags and messages of hope on Wednesday in solidarity with countries affected by the coronavirus pandemic. The statue, which overlooks the city of Rio de Janeiro, was lit up with the flags of countries that have reported cases of the virus. The Bishop of Rio de Janeiro held a mass at the landmark church and reminded the faithful that Christ conquers, Christ reigns, Christ commands, and urged people to pray for the sick all over the world. The message, #PrayTogether, was also projected onto the statue in different languages. The number of coronavirus cases has topped 218,000 worldwide. And on Sunday, Pope Francis praised the creativity of priests who, despite the suspension of masses, are finding unique ways to be with their congregations amid the ongoing spread of this virus. Father Giuseppe Corabari, whose parish is in Italy's Lombardy region, the epicenter of the coronavirus outbreak, wanted to find a way to be with his 5,500 registered parishioners, even though they were not able to come to Mass. So he taped selfies of his parishioners to the pews. Corabari said, quote, "This gesture meant a lot to the people who, even in staying home, were still present." People from other parishes and cities began to send their pictures too. Within a few days, his pastoral gesture had gone viral. His parish live streams masses on Sundays, while daily masses are transmitted via a local parish radio station. Meanwhile, in London, Cardinal Vincent Nichols, Archbishop of Westminster, addressed the suspension of masses in his archdiocese this way.
Day by day, we're going to learn how to pray at home, on our own, with our friends, wherever we are. So please don't lose heart. Please get deeper rooted. When a plant is derived of some surface water, it has to put down deeper roots. We are going to have to put down deeper roots of the Spirit and we know that God will nurture us. God has never been limited by his sacraments. The Holy Spirit gives us the living water where we need it. So let's learn how to pray in the rhythm of the church in a new way for a while. You know, many people around the world are deprived of regular attendance at Mass. So let's have them in our hearts. Those who are under persecution, those who are in violence, those who are at such remote places where a priest can rarely get. They learn through that abstinence from the Eucharist to love and treasure it even more. So when all this is done, when we can move freely again, we'll have a greater hunger for the Mass. As we pray deeply, let's be generous very wholeheartedly as well. These are difficult times. We stick together. We deepen our faith in a new way, and we express it more generously in our care for those around us. And God will bless us. Remember the words, "The Lord is my shepherd. There is nothing I shall want."
Vincent Nichols from London, joining me now to discuss what is being done spiritually and otherwise in his diocese during this coronavirus pandemic is Bishop Michael Burbidge of the Diocese of Arlington, Virginia. Bishop, thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much, Raymond. And I know all of us, all your viewers, we are all united in prayer at this very critical time in our world and nation.
Do you think that the suspension of Masses, Bishop, creates a greater hunger for the Mass, as Cardinal Nichols suggested it might?
I do. I think it's edifying in many ways. Certainly, it breaks any bishop's heart, as it did mine, to announce the suspension of public Masses, the celebration of public Masses. But what was edifying is to see how emotional people were when they realized that that precious gift that we take as ours, available to us all the time, would not be that gift we would receive on a daily basis in the time being. To see the sadness, it was almost edifying, because the love of the Lord and the recognition of our need for him is so great.
And Bishop, you, as you alluded to there, you waited till the very end. At first, I noticed you tried to extend this as much as possible and make the Mass available to people. It was really just in the last week that you had to suspend the Masses. Now, we've never had a suspension of Masses across the U.S. in this way. Is there a danger in crossing that historical line?
I don't think so. And you're right. I tried to the very end to make sure that we could continue with the public celebration of Masses. But when we also have to be responsible and citizens and take care of one another. And when the recommendation was for no more than 10 in a gathering, it certainly was the prudent thing to do. And that's a question I'm asked. Well, if we suspend the Mass, and how are we going to get people back? And you know, that's what I'm encouraging people to do, is you make this spiritual communion with the Lord. I know you want to receive him, Holy Communion, but as you express this desire to receive the Lord, make that your intention. And Lord, here's my intention as I make this spiritual communion. Please give to your people that deeper longing and thirst to receive you at Holy Communion, to participate in the daily Mass. So that's my hope and prayer, that the opposite is going to happen. Not that people will stay away, but people will know, will come forward with much more zeal and gratitude.
Bishop Burbidge, there have been times throughout history, I mean, I'm thinking of communist Russia, some people in China currently live in places where the Mass can't be openly celebrated, so they celebrate in their own homes. How do you go about celebrating Mass at home without benefit of a priest? How do you do that?
And so what we are seeing in our diocese is the live stream, the live stream of Mass. So many of our parishes are doing that at the regular time that Mass is being offered, And the community, in a sense, is united because they're watching the Mass, they're participating the Mass at every time. And what a great gift that is, not only in our parishes, our Basilica Shrine here in Washington, Sunday Mass, and for many of the homebound, that's the way that they come to hear the Lord's Word and participate in the Mass. Certainly an extraordinary time for most of us, but at least it's a way of being united with our parish priests and one another.
Bishop, I want to read you something. In a letter last week, Pope Francis's secretary, Father Ioannis Laïs-Giad, had this to say about closure of churches and the responsibility of priests. We'll put it up on the screen. He writes, in the epidemic of fear that we are all living due to the coronavirus pandemic, we risk behaving more like wage earners than as pastors. I think of the people who will certainly abandon the church when this nightmare is over because the church abandoned them when they were in need. May it never be said, quote, I won't go to the church that didn't come to me when I was in need. We think of all the souls who are fearful and left alone because we pastors follow civil instructions, which is right and clearly necessary in this moment to avoid contagion. But in doing so, priests risk putting aside divine instructions, which is a sin. What should priests be doing now in order for the faithful to feel that they are with them, that they're leading them, and concerned about their spiritual and physical well-being, Bishop?
Right, and it's possible. I think it's possible at this moment, at least, to have our churches open and respectful of the guidelines of what the medical experts are asking of us. And so I think at this time you can do that. But the church is the Lord's church. And so the Lord will never abandon his people. And so the church, even in some locations or perhaps areas of the world where the doors of the church can't be open, the church is still with her people. And it's beautiful to see how the sacraments are still being celebrated. The sacrament of confession, the anointing of the sick. It's really wonderful to see the works of charity are continuing. God's presence in the midst of his people in need.
I was going to ask you about that. How are confessions, anointing of the sick, how does that proceed under these circumstances, Bishop?
Well, last night I was very blessed to hear confessions in one of our parishes for over an hour and a half. Three of the priests were hearing confessions, and we celebrated that beautiful sacrament, and we were respectful of all the guidelines that we had. We were in spaces where that social distancing was there between the penitent and the confessor, and also of the penitent standing in line. That means we had to shift the rooms, not the usual confessional, but a place where the confidentiality certainly could be respected. So that was, and I just received a note today from one of my priests who had to anoint someone with the coronavirus and was so grateful to the hospital who allowed him to follow all the medical precautions, and he could administer their sacraments. So the church is there. The church is with her people in this time of need.
What about a small group of faithful joining priests for private Mass? Every priest has to say Mass privately if he can't do it, in a public setting. I know many pastors across the country, and I've been getting emails for the last week. What they're doing is they're having Mass privately at the appointed time, and they're letting faithful come in small groups. Now, maybe it's only 10 or 15 people, and they're spaced out throughout the church, but truly that respects the social distancing and allows some faithful to be present. A good idea?
One thing that's important that you just said, though, is that the Masses are being celebrated in the diocese. The priests are offering Masses and remembering the intentions of the Mass, too. I think at this critical point in time, at least for the next 10 days or 15 days, I think the intention of not bringing people unnecessarily out into these encounters, should be respected. And, I think right now, I think the fact that the assurance is that Mass is being offered for the people of God and for the special intentions should give us some comfort and consolation.
What about Holy Week and Easter? I mean, shouldn't there be some faithful there? I read an article this week where, whether it's in your diocese or it's in Rome, that you can socially distance people. I mean, I'll have to tell you, in New Orleans, we went to Mass last weekend. There might have been 30 people in the church, and it's a huge church that seats probably 1,000. It was easy to space out. I mean, there was no one, I couldn't hit anybody with a missile if I wanted to, of either variety. They were so far away. Shouldn't some faithful be present at those Holy Week services and certainly at Easter if they're kept at a safe social distance?
Right. I think that's our hope and our prayer. And I think that's why, myself included, many of my brother bishops, we have not yet made those decisions about the Holy Week and Easter, because, as you know, every day there's new information is coming forward. And so pray God that we're going to receive some information and some news and updates that's going to allow us to be prudent and reflective in the way we will go about that. But I think right now we have a little bit of time to make that decision, but pray God there will be some creative ways for the celebration of Holy Week and Easter.
Now, though Mass has been suspended, the doors of most parishes are open for people to engage in private prayer, adoration. I've been getting notes from priests who say, look, I've been putting the Blessed Sacrament out, we're having adoration, but we're encouraging only allowing a small group in if we let anybody in. What has been the response to the people in your diocese to that decision to keep the churches open throughout this time?
People are very grateful that the doors of the church are open, and they're very respectful of what's being asked of them. But to have that play, and it's very edifying. Even right here, where my office is right on our same property as our cathedral. It's so beautiful at all times, every hour of the day, just seeing one or two or three people just wanting to come to church to be with the Lord, and I'm sure praying for their families, for their friends, and certainly for our world and nation. So that opportunity to be in God's house is certainly a blessing.
I want to play this for you. This is Bishop Thomas Olmsted of the Diocese of Phoenix. He had this to say about the obligation to attend weekly Mass.
In these circumstances, you are dispensed from Sunday Mass obligation. Let me leave you with the words of St. John Paul II. Remember that you are never alone. Christ is with you on your journey every day of your lives. Please continue to pray for one another, and I will be praying for you.
Now, Bishop, you mentioned earlier the access to live streaming. EWTN has the daily Mass, which they run several times a day, and I know a lot of people have been watching, given the email traffic I've seen and Twitter traffic. How important is it for bishops and priests to put out messages like the one we just heard, and what tangible form should this at-home observation of the Mass take? Should people break out their Bibles? Should there be discussion? What would you recommend?
Yeah, thank you, EWTN, for providing the daily Mass at the schedule that you mentioned, Raymond. What a great gift that is to the faithful. And yes, I think the bishop's message was beautiful. And I think it helps people need to hear that dispensation. These are extraordinary circumstances, so there is no feeling of guilt, please, no feeling of shame or anything like that. You're dispensed from this obligation in these extraordinary circumstances. And as you watch Mass at TV, I think it's beautiful if you could have the readings, do the readings, the Word of God in advance of the celebration of Mass. And it may be after Mass to exactly do that, to say, God was present to us today. We just heard His Word. What did the Lord say to us? What a beautiful way that would be for a family to allow God's Word to penetrate their hearts and their lives.
Yeah, no, it's a chance for that domestic church to really be seen in a very new and unexpected way. Now, some people are concerned that they will not be able to receive the Eucharist because they can't attend Mass. Now, what I think most people may not realize is it's not obligatory to receive the Eucharist every time you attend Mass, correct?
Correct. Sometimes you're not able to, but that's always the intention. The full participation in the Mass is the reception of the body and blood of Christ, so we should prepare ourselves for that. But, again, it's, watching the Mass on television, obviously is not the same Mass of, being in a community and receiving the body and blood of Christ. But you are hearing God's word being proclaimed. You're seeing the celebration of his Mass, and you can make that beautiful. I suggest that strongly, that spiritual communion, my desire to receive you, Lord, in Holy Eucharist. Even though I'm unable to today at this moment, but that desire is so strong, Lord. That spiritual communion is a source of abundant graces.
The president of the USCCB, Bishop Gomez, has called for the intercession of the Virgin Mary as the patron of the Americas during this crisis. The Pope prayed a global rosary for the protection from the coronavirus. He just did that today. For our non-Catholic viewers who hear that, Bishop, why pray to Mary? Why urge her intercession?
Well, our beautiful faith tells us that Mary is that mother of God, the greatest of all saints, that God gave us to her from the cross. My mother, this is your mother. And so she's always there in our time of need. So we have a powerful intercessor. But her role in our lives is always to lead us closer to her Son, with that promise that Jesus is in our midst. And right now, during this Lenten season, we're walking with him to Jerusalem. We're carrying our cross and a burden that none of us anticipated. But if we unite it to his, that glory be ours. And Mary shows us that way.
Bishop, the Pope has written a prayer to Mary asking her intercession. We're going to post this both on the EWTN Facebook page. I'll also put it on the World Over Twitter page. And it asks that Our Lady intercede, that she intervene in this moment of time. It begins this way. I'll just read the beginning. Mary, you always shine on our path as a sign of salvation and of hope. We entreat ourselves to you, health of the sick who at the cross took part in Jesus' pain, keeping your faith firm. You, salvation of the Roman people, know what we need, and we are sure you will provide, so that as in Cana of Galilee, we may return to joy and to feasting after this time of trial. And the rest of the prayer we'll put up. Bishop, in these final moments, what is your message to those watching not only from your diocese, but around the world?
Dear friends, we're not alone. God is with us. He's the God who promises to protect us and to deliver us and to help us in our need. Our God's faithful. Trust in his promises.
Bishop Michael Burbidge, thank you for that message and for your time, and we will check in with you soon. And to follow the Bishop's national response to the coronavirus pandemic, you can check out usccb.org. Father Gerald Murray is next, but first, some more news. At least 10 priests have died in Italy after contracting the coronavirus. More than half of them were in the Diocese of Bergamo, a town outside of Milan. The Bishop of Bergamo, the Italian diocese hardest hit by the virus outbreak, said Monday that the 20 priests in his diocese have been hospitalized after contracting it, and they've shown considerable improvement, but 6 others have died. Bergamo was the hometown of Pope John XXIII. More than 27,000 people in Italy have been infected with the coronavirus. 2,470 have died in just over 3 weeks. Pope Francis took on Sunday an extraordinary, dramatic, solitary walking pilgrimage through the city of Rome. He prayed for an end to the coronavirus pandemic during a surprise visit to the Basilica of St. Mary Major, and a cross that traversed Rome during a 16th century plague. According to the Vatican, the Pope went to the Basilica to visit the icon of Mary, protection of the Roman people, to invoke her intercession against the coronavirus pandemic. The image had been processed by Pope St. Gregory the Great in the 6th century to protect Rome from a plague. From the papal basilica, the Pope walked about half a mile to the church of San Marcello al Corso to pray before a miraculous crucifix which was once carried through the streets of Rome during the plague of 1522. Pope Francis implored healing for the many sick, remembered the many victims of these days, and asked that their friends and family find consolation and comfort. He also prayed for healthcare workers, doctors and nurses, and those working to keep society functioning while many are under forced or voluntary quarantine. Joining me now is a friend who has been personally affected by the coronavirus. He is in self-quarantine after his exposure to someone infected with COVID-19. Joining us now from New York is canon lawyer, priest of the Archdiocese of New York, and a member of the Papal Posse, Father GERALD MURRAY. Father Jerry, now tell me what this situation is. You're at the Church of the Holy Family in Manhattan, your parish. You had contact with one of your parishioners who had tested positive for coronavirus. What happened?
Yes, Raymond. Well, on March the 10th, I went to visit this parishioner. She's a woman in her 90s, but a strong woman. And I went to her apartment for a meeting, and I was there with two other people and this lovely parishioner for about a half hour. And a week later, St. Patty's Day, I was informed that this parishioner had been taken to NYU Langone Hospital and that she was diagnosed with coronavirus. So at that point, I did what we were told to do, and I think it's very wise, the self-isolation for 14 days. And I sent the employees home from the rectory and closed the church. I've contacted a cleaning company. We'll have that church cleaned thoroughly because that parishioner had been at Mass last week.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, so we want to make sure the facility's clean and that the pastor doesn't get anybody sick. And right now I'm enjoying quiet time in New York, which is a rarity.
I'll say. Have you had any symptoms at all yourself?
No, I haven't, thank the Lord. I have no symptoms. I've been feeling fine. But, you know, as out of precaution, because as they say, you can have it and mild case not even, and also
be asymptomatic.
Exactly, be asymptomatic and a carrier, so I don't want to spread it to others.
Father, give me a sense. You are a lifelong New Yorker. Give me a sense of what's happening in New York now. It is so still, I am told, and quiet on the streets and just outdoors. What's been your experience of watching this silence drape the city and really the whole country?
It is amazing. You can see that the lifeblood of the city is no longer out on the streets. You know, the people are home. I admire all the workers who are, you know, continuing to do their jobs, you know, sanitation men, police, fire. But as regards people who have the ability to work from their home, you know, the age of computers and internet and all that good stuff certainly allows that work to be done in another way. But yeah, it's a little bit like the way New York would be, you know, on a federal holiday at 6 a.m. No cars on the street, no people walking. It's an everyday event. Very few people outside.
No, it's amazing. I mean, to see a city like this shut down, no Broadway, Wall Street's going to cease next week. They're not going to have the stock market on the floor. They'll still trade electronically. But, you know, to have an entertainment, media, financial powerhouse like that basically shuttered, it's an astounding and humbling thing to watch happen. Father, how are the day-to-day operations at your parish being handled with you in self-isolation?
Well, we can say they're not being handled because there's no one here. Once I found out that I had been in contact with a person who has coronavirus, I sent the workers home. They're going to miss at least 2 weeks. And yeah, so right now, yours truly is answering emails, and the mailman still comes, so we'll take the mail in. But it's very unusual. You know, I realize, you know, they say a parish is not the building, it's the people. And that really comes to my mind, and it's right in front of my eyes. No people coming to church. You know, we can say that the parish, it's like a war situation. We know the parishioners at home praying, but we just don't see them at church.
Wow. I'll bet you're eager to get out of this situation and get back to ministry.
Well, you know, you and I know we're talking on TV all these years. I'm not exactly a wallflower sitting back and doing nothing.
Yeah, we're similar. I pray I don't come into contact with anybody who has it, because I don't know what I'd do if I couldn't make at least my coffee runs and bike around the neighborhood. You know, you need to get out.
Sure. Yeah, no one calls us introverts, and that's accurate. But it's a good time. It's actually a little bit like going on retreat, and I say that because I'm able to do all my prayers in nice peace and quiet. I plan on, you know, continuing that spirit, and it's also a good time to catch up on some reading. And part of the lifeblood of the priesthood is to read Catholic books and come up with material that we can share with the faithful through preaching.
What would be your advice, Father, and I'll leave you with this, what would be your advice and counsel to those who are also sheltered at home, they never expected it, and how should they use their time?
Well, I would say don't think about this as a time to do nothing. Think about it as a time to organize your life in a new way. And I certainly would say, if you get up in the morning early, keep doing that. Maybe dedicate some more time to, activities with the family members if you have wife and kids. But certainly having a schedule and putting prayer at the top of it is going to be very important. And I guess the other thing to say is to inform yourself well. Our archdiocese had a phone conference yesterday, and they sent us some very good information about COVID-19, the coronavirus. So, the more we know, the more our mind will be at ease. And there's a lot of good information out there. My real message, though, would be, God has a message for all of us in the midst of this. And that message is this life is not forever. The life to come is eternal. So prepare your soul well, whether God calls you now or later, and realize that, so many human hopes are founded on things like entertainment and advancement and wealth. What really counts in life, am I at peace with God and do I love my neighbor? And now's the time to do more of that.
I agree. No, my son, one of my sons said, as they were watching the news coverage, I don't want to hear about all this stuff about, people dying and people getting sick. And I said, well, son, it's a good reminder that, none of us are here forever. This does come to an end. This life that we think goes on, particularly when you're a young person, you think it goes on and on and on. It doesn't. So we have to make good use of the time we have and make sure we're strengthening those relationships and doing the best we can and as much good as we can in the time we have. So, Father, we're praying for you in your confinement. I hope it is brief, and we'll get you back on before long.
Great, Raymond. God bless you and all the listeners. And, ask Our Lady to bring an end to this, to intercede with God for an end to this plague.
Amen. Father GERALD Murray's commentary can be found at thecatholicthing.org. Check it out. And my next guest is a clinical psychologist, a longtime host of The Doctor Is In on EWTN Radio. He's also the father of 10 adopted children and the author of the new book, Raising Upright Kids in an Upside-Down World. Boy, could that book have come at a better time or what? He's here with me today with his advice to all of us, parents who are now working from home and essentially homeschooling our children as a result of this pandemic. Please welcome back to the program, Dr. Ray GUARENDI. Dr. Ray, how are you all doing over there?
Hi, Raymond. Nothing gaining on me here.
All right, well, good. Well, good. Now, look, most Americans, their lives have changed very rapidly within the span of a week. As I mentioned earlier, schools are closed, spring breaks are being extended, high schools, colleges are going online. I've got kids in separate rooms listening to their professors or teachers. This means kids are in the house and parents are working from home. What strategies can they employ, the parents, to deal with this new normal?
New situations, Raymond, give you an insight into something maybe you needed to have. If a parent is being driven crazy by the kids at home, my first suggestion, look at your discipline skills. Can you control the chaos through some normal, confident, calm discipline? Because if those kids are home 3 times as much as they normally are, then you're going to have 3 times the look at your discipline skills.
Good. That's great advice. What about, it is difficult, though, I think, when you have, and it, again, you talk about this new situation. I've watched it in our own house. I'm working in my office. I've got my son in the other room, with his professors at Notre Dame. I've got my kids in their rooms. They're doing their lessons from school, which the high school is sending. And my wife is running like a triage operation between all the rooms, trying to keep everybody fed, on point. What advice would you give to the layout of the day, the scheduling of the day? Should that change or be adjusted given this new reality we're dealing with?
Paradigm shift slow down. The Americans sometimes have to be hit with a 2x4 to change our style. We have been forced, Raymond, to slow down. I know I'm sitting here in my living room, and in there I'm painting cabinets that I wasn't going to paint until the year 2051. I'm painting cabinets, and then I'm going to read, and then and you know what else I'm going to do? I'm going to talk to my wife. We have a chance, maybe a week, maybe 3, maybe 4, 5. Slow down. As a friend of mine said, he asked his son's 16, "What are you going to do tonight?" "Nothing." "Well, what about tomorrow?" "Nothing." "What about the day after tomorrow?" "Nothing." "Okay, then enjoy it, son."
Yeah, no, we've found, I mean, I'll tell you, Ray, and I'll make a little confession publicly here. I have not been out bike riding with my children in probably 5 or 6 years when they were very small. It's just something we stopped doing. Well, we've done it this week. There are all these things, watching movies together, TED
Raymond?
Talks together. I made a recommended list of things people could watch. I wrote an article about it on Fox News the other day because it's a great time to educate kids in the world we grew up in and allow them to educate us in the world they're in currently.
Oh, yeah, of course. But my mom and dad were teenagers in World War II. And they told me the kinds of things they had to do for 3.5 years. And I'm thinking, comparing to what they did to what I have to do, okay, I can't go out to eat. Okay, I'm not going to get my hair cut for another week or 2. Okay, I've got to sit down and read a little bit. I have to tell myself, Raymond, don't be a baby.
What, Ray, how do we schedule, and should there be a schedule in the house, given the different realities that everybody in the same household is living in under the same roof? You don't have the break. You can't go off and work somewhere else. You got to work at the house. You're teleworking. The kids are having to do their studies and lessons in the house. How do you harmoniously make that work when you've never had to do it before?
Sometimes it will make itself work, Raymond. We are forced to adjust our schedules. People will say to me, how do I not treat my sister-in-law mean? And I will answer, don't treat your sister-in-law mean. It's not a matter of how. It's a matter of do it. You have a different schedule. You have more flexibility, and you have some shifts and changes. Okay? Do it. It's not a matter of, I got to find the technique or the formula to do this. It's a matter of, this is what we are doing. And Raymond, I want to go back to that discipline thing. 80% of the reason that parents tell me their kids drive them crazy is because the parent doesn't feel like he or she has discipline control. They can't say, that's disrespectful, go sit on your bed. Sit down at the table, put your head down, I'll set the timer. They can't do that, so therefore everything becomes a potential clash. That's chaos.
Now, what if they haven't been doing it all along, okay? They haven't been disciplining the kid because there was that distance, but now you're confronted with the reality of it. What should they do? How do they begin a system of discipline in this time of crisis and a lot of panic and anxiety? Let's face it.
That's easy, Raymond. Go out and buy all my books. And if they don't want to do that, what they can do, very simple strategy. Make your request. That's the first step. Think about what you will do if your request is ignored or defied. In other words, what will be your consequence, and then enforce it. If you do this successfully the first 2-3 days that the kids are home, you will see a 50% plummet in the friction and the turbulence in that home. Guarantee it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. Look, but before we go, your newest book, which seems as if it was perfectly timed, Raising Upright Kids in an Upside-Down World, Defying the Anti-Parent Culture. Could this unprecedented crisis somehow have a positive effect, not only on parenting, but on families? I just see it as an opportunity to read together, which is something, people rarely do as a family unit, to watch things together and not in isolation in everybody going to their corners, and to just spend time talking, communicating.
A client walks into my office, Raymond. I almost never don't have some ideas to help them live their lives better. Do you know what I don't have? I don't have the leverage to make them do it. Oftentimes, we human, call it fallen human nature, we have to be forced to do what is good for us, and then we see the payoff, and then some of us continue to do it after the force is gone.
Yeah. I want to play something before we run out of time. I saw this the other day. CBS News aired interviews with kids down in Florida at spring break, oblivious to the coronavirus threat, the national and public health emergency that's gripped the country. They're partying and they really don't care. Listen.
If I get corona, I get corona. At the end of the day, I'm not going to let it stop me from partying. We've been waiting for Miami spring break for a while.
Dr. Ray, what would you say to those kids if you were their parents?
Oh, Raymond, I am trained to use very sophisticated psychological language. I would say that these are spoiled, grown-up brats.
Yeah. I think people would agree with you. Entitled spoiled brats. Dr. Ray, we will leave it there. Your book, Raising Upright Kids in an Upside-Down World, is available everywhere. And, of course, Dr. Ray GUARENDI has his show on EWTN, which you should check out. The book is at the EWTN Religious Catalog, EWTNRC.com. Dr. Ray, be safe. Thanks for the time.
Raymond, always.
The coronavirus pandemic is hitting the entire world as it continues to spread, but a population that's being overlooked is the homeless. As businesses and other segments of society close down, many food banks are unable to provide the services they once did to homeless populations throughout the world. My next guest is the Community Engagement Officer for New York City Relief, and he's here tonight to tell us what his organization is doing to aid and support the vulnerable homeless population in New York City. Nick Iorio joins us from Manhattan. Nick, thanks for being with us. Now, the homelessness has reached the highest levels in New York City since the Great Depression. New York City saw a 2.8% increase in the population between 2017 and 2018, with 78,676 people reported homeless last year. Now, how many people do you normally feed and help in a given week, Nick?
It's thousands. In fact, we had an outreach today that served over 800 people in a period of 3 hours. And one of the people that we serve every week is a man named George. George came to us yesterday at our relief in Chelsea Park, which is on the west side of New York City. And he's been coming to be with us for years, but yesterday he was so surprised that we were still serving. And more than anything, he came not just for the food or the hygiene kits that we'd serve, but he came for the relationship that he thought wouldn't be there because so many soup kitchens, so many shelters are closing, and we don't begrudge outreaches that are not happening, but we're out there serving every day like we normally would.
Now, New York City Relief has been providing food, as you mentioned, hygiene kits to the homeless community since 1989. You have mobile units that are set up in 5 locations, 7 times a week. How are you able to continue serving this community in light of this coronavirus, particularly if you have a shelter-in-place order, as de Blasio has been discussing?
Well, Raymond, I think this gets to the heart of what we've seen over the last week. We have to balance social distancing with social responsibility. We're called not just to serve when it's convenient, not just to serve when we have the capability of serving. We have to serve no matter what. And we feel like at New York City Relief, we're meeting people on the streets every day that need our services more than ever. Yesterday, we met another friend, Jose, who just came from Puerto Rico. He came here looking for work. he came at the worst time. But we're out there serving people like Jose and George, because we know that although the need is going up, people still have to be given the food and shelter that requires. We don't provide shelters ourselves. Like you said, we have 7 mobile outreach vehicles that go out throughout New York City and New Jersey every week.
Yeah, and time was, Nick, you would set up tables and really create a sense of community where you're interacting with these people, your volunteers interact with them. You're not able to do that anymore. It's basically pass-through service, right? You can't spend that kind of time. But your work depends on volunteers. Are you having trouble getting people to volunteer now in this crisis?
So we have a full complement of volunteers. We feel like over the next few weeks and months, we're going to have people who can serve. Our focus right now are the financial contributions we need to keep going, right? As the demand goes up, we're going to need to fill in the void that other soup kitchens aren't willing to do. And so our main challenge right now is not so much volunteers. We've got the staff, we've got the teams that can go out. We need people to make generous gifts so that our staff who are willing to take on the risk, right? We're not doubting that it's a risk to go out and serve people, but we've set up precautions that allow us to serve the homeless. Right now we need generous people, whether they're New Yorkers, whether they're from other parts of the country. We need Americans to help us feed the largest homeless population in the city, in the country. You were giving some statistics at the beginning. What you didn't mention, and what most people don't know, is not only are the numbers of homeless going up, the percentage of people who die on the streets going up as well. Last year, 39% of the homeless population died because of their circumstance on the street. That's what we're trying to really draw back and try to trim back. And we feel like here in New York City right now, there's a great opportunity for people to give and serve. Even if they want to keep their distance, we're willing to go out and serve, and we want people to come alongside us by making financial contributions.
What are the homeless telling you about life on the streets during this pandemic?
There's a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of misinformation. A lot of people who are homeless have been betrayed by the city. They've been betrayed by shelters because the shelter system, frankly, is not safe. We are allowed to listen to what's happening on the street, and people who we were serving yesterday and today are telling us there's a lot of anxiety and fear. People don't know what to believe from leaders, from people who are in the city. But when they come to be with us, when they come to get a hot meal with us, which is one of the last hot meals they'll get in a day or maybe they'll get in a week, they can have a community experience. Even though we're not setting up tables and chairs as we normally would, they're still able to be with friends. And we feel like what we're hearing on the street are people are anxious, but we are trying to relieve not just their suffering from a lack of nourishment, we're trying to relieve the anxieties and the fears that are naturally all around us. And I want to say that the Lord will use any crisis to help bring good out of it. And we're already seeing the fruits of our work by the many hundreds of people that have come to get our meals, but we need more people to help us get those meals by making financial gifts to us.
Nick, I only have 2 minutes. New York City Relief also lists among its services prayer. And how important is it that these people on the street and the volunteers and the members of your team pray together? And how do you see God in others in this work that your organization does?
Well, I think the most important thing to remember is we are a faith-based organization, and the gospel is the cornerstone of everything we do. And we believe that all of our guests, all of our volunteers, everyone that we interact with has an inherent and an intrinsic dignity and beauty. And we feel like this is a crisis that has come upon us. No one chose to be in the midst of this, but we feel like this is a time for the gospel to be lived out. And that's why we're still going out. That's why we're still serving. And we want people to join us as much as they can, as much as they feel called to serve with us. They can either by coming out with us, but right now we're focused on people coming alongside us as financial contributors and people who can
where can they help, Nick? I'm almost out of time. Where can they go to help?
New York City Relief, all spelled out, all one word, .org/donate. NewYorkCityRelief.org/donate. They can come alongside us, make a gift, and be part of this great story that we're trying to share with everybody.
Nick, thanks so much for the time, and God bless you in your important work on those streets. I know it's not easy. Thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you, Raymond.
Before we go, I have been amazed by the reaction to this pandemic shutdown at home in New Orleans. For the most part, people are extremely chill. They're taking this in stride. Now, I think a big part of that is due to the fact that we deal with hurricanes and natural disasters routinely in this part of the country. But there are two other reasons I think that a New Orleans spirit is needed right about now. Number one, we're prepared. There's always something to cook. It's often pretty good. And we band together as a family and find a way forward. For the most part, we're not what I like to call roof squatters, those poor souls that you saw during Hurricane Katrina sitting on their roofs waiting to be rescued by the government or somebody else. The government does few things well, and it is not wise to hope that they'll rescue you. Prudently prepare and, without worry or angst, be ready. Number two, beyond physical preparedness, we need to be spiritually ready as well, praying with and for those around us. This pandemic is bigger than any one of us. As Padre Pio once advised, pray, fast, and don't worry. Enjoy this time together as a family. You may never get this kind of time again. To that end, I've written a list of movies you might want to consider during your quarantine life. It's up on foxnews.com and on my social media channels. And I've always thought that one of the best things you can do as a family, as I mentioned to Dr. Ray, is read a book together. Go on a literary adventure from home. On March 24th, the paperback edition of Will Wilder III, The Amulet of Power, hits bookstores. You can order it for home delivery. And what better way to have fun than giving the gift of literature, reading the whole Will Wilder saga as a family. All three Will Wilder books are available as audiobooks. They're on Kindle. Go to RaymondArroyo.com or to your favorite bookseller. You can get all three. I'll also be doing a Facebook Live read aloud on a few chapters of the books, Saturday, March 21st, and Tuesday, March 24th. I'll be answering your questions as well. You can go to Facebook and my Twitter accounts for more details. The links are at RaymondArroyo.com. Be sure to join us next week. Until then, we'll be scouting the world over for all that is seen and unseen. Be safe. On behalf of the staff and crew of EWTN News, thanks for watching. I'm Raymond Arroyo. Bye now.